Good day! For today's video, we're going to discuss Arts 10 Quarter 1 Module 2 Characteristics of Arts from the various art movements, Abstractionism sub-movement, Op Art, and Pop Art. Objectives: at the end of the lesson, the students should be able to 1. Differentiate Op Arts and Pop Arts. 2. Enumerate the renowned artists who contributed to the world of Op Art and Pop Arts. 3. Create an artwork exhibiting the characteristics of Op Art and Pop Art. And 4. Value the importance of contribution of the said art styles to the modern form of art. Op Art, Optical Art, late 1950s and 1960s. It is another art movement that gives a visual experience, a form of action painting, taking place in the viewer's eye, giving the illusion of the movement. Op artworks are abstract with many better-known pieces created in black and white. Typically, they give the viewer the impression of movement, hidden images, flashing, and vibrating patterns, or swelling or warping. Op art explores optical sensations through the use of visual effects such as recurring simple forms and rhythmic patterns, vibrating color combinations, moire patterns, and foreground-background confusion. Formally, all op art paintings and works employ tricks of visual perception like manipulating rules of perspective to give the illusion of three-dimensional space, mixing colors to create the impression of light and shadow. Origins of op art. The roots of op art in terms of graphic and color effects can be traced back to Impressionism, Cubism, Futurism, and Dada, but the movement perhaps more closely derives from the constructivist practices of the Bauhaus. The German school stressed the relationship of form and function without a framework of analysis and rationality, which led to mirroring and counterculture of the time in the embrace of graphic shapes and bright colors. Victor Vasarely, 1906 to 1997, he was a French-Hungarian artist and the forefather of op art movement. He struggled to create a universal visual language that could be understood by everyone. He took inspiration and orientation from the theories of the Bauhaus, suprematism, and geometric abstraction. His paintings aim at forcing people out of their visual comfort zone, with the pleasant tension created by apparently moving images that steer their minds towards doubt and new ideas. He wanted to bring life into everyday life with the play of colors and shapes, immersing himself in the world of optical art experiments. Famous works of Victor Vasarely: Zebra, 1937, Vega 200, 1968, Veganor, 1969. Bridget Riley, April 24, 1931, aged 91. She is one of the best-known op art painters, famous for her striking murals composed of multiple stripes which create optical illusions for the viewer. Her black and white geometric patterns explore the dynamism of sight and produce a disorienting effect on the eye, creating an illusion of movement and color. Riley is known in the public consciousness for her iconic black and white geometric works, as well as for her temporary public murals in major institutions such as the Tate Gallery in London and Musée d'Art Moderne in Paris. She currently lives and works in both the United Kingdom and France. Famous works of Bridget Riley: Movement in Square, 1961, Blaze 1, 1962, Blaze Study, 1962. Richard Anuskiewicz, 1930 to 2020. He was an American painter, printmaker, and sculptor. He was one of the founders of op art. Victor Vasarely in France and Bridget Riley in England were his primary international counterparts. In 1964, Life magazine called him one of the new wizards of op. Anuskiewicz's style was concerned with the optical changes that occur when different high-intensity colors are applied to the same geometric configurations. Most of his work comprises visual investigations of formal in structural and color effects, many of them nested square forms, similar to the work of his mentor Joseph Albers. Famous works of Richard Anuskiewicz: Temple of Deep Crimson, 1985, Fluorescent Complement, 1960, Knowledge and Disappearance, 1961. Sample of arts. These dots are completely white. Rotating rays. The outer ring of the rays appear to rotate clockwise while the inner one counterclockwise. The autumn color swamp. The inset appears to move. A bulge. The floor appears to bulge out through this image consists of only squares. Primroses field. This checkered background consists of squares but appear to wave. In addition, this figure also shows a waving motion illusion. Rollers. Rollers appear to rotate without effort. On the other hand, they appear to rotate in opposite direction when observers see this image keeping blinking. How to draw op art, creating undulating and bulging curves. 1. Draw a wavy line horizontally across the page. The more waves you make, the more complex your finished drawing will appear. Start with about 3 to 4 waves if you're a beginner. 2. Place 8 dots along the line, 2 near the edges, 6 randomly spaced. Place a dot on the wavy line within about 1 inch from the left edge of the paper, and place another one within about 1 inch from the right edge. Draw the other 6 dots in between these two, wherever you feel like putting them. 3. Draw arches above the wavy line that connect the dots. Draw an upward curve on arc, like a rainbow, that starts at dot 1 and ends at dot 2. Do the same between dots 2 and 3, and so on. Also start arches at dot 1 and dot 8 that disappear off the edge of the page. 4. Repeat the arches again and again until they extend off the page. Draw a new arc on top of the initial arc between dots 1 and 2, and do the same between dots 2 and 3, and so on. Keep doing this over and over again until all the arches above the wavy line run off the top of the page. 5. Replicate the arch pattern beneath the wavy line as well. Follow the exact same process under the wavy line as you did above it. The upside-down rainbows don't have to be mirror images of the arches above them, but keep them within the same general height range. 6. Color the spaces between a single stack of arches in a 3-color pattern. For example, use red to color the space between the wavy line and the arc between dots 1 and 2. Then use blue to color the gap above the first arc and beneath the second arc, and black to color the gap above the second arc and beneath the third one. Keep repeating this until you go off the top of the page. 7. Mirror the coloring pattern above the wavy line on the stack of arches directly below. Since you colored the arches in a red-blue-black pattern above dots 1 and 2, color the arches beneath dots 1 and 2 in a blue-black-red pattern. 8. Repeat the coloring process for each stack of arches above and below the line. For example, color the arch stack above dots 2 and 3 in a blue-black-red pattern, and the arches below dots 2 and 3 in a black-red-blue pattern. The goal is to avoid having consecutive gaps in the same color, although it won't ruin your picture if this happens occasionally. Finished artwork. An example of op art. Pop art. Pop art, popular art. It is an art movement that emerged in 1950s and flourished in 1960s in America and Britain. It made use of the commonplace, trivial, even nonsensical objects. It is a commercial art, a reproducible art form of the seemingly eternal icons for the masses, developed on the streets, outside of the galleries of the elite, and from the symbols of daily life. Artists started to use symbols and references which were a direct reference to everyday products, brands, and mass symbols. The culture which was influencing people's lives, views, and habits. Origins of pop art. Although generally associated with the United States, pop art found an early voice in Britain as a critical and ironic reflection on the post-war consumer culture of the late 1950s. In 1952, Britain, a group of artists, writers, and critics, which would come to be known as independent group, began to meet regularly, driven by a common perception of a gap between the art and life of the time, to discuss new theories and methods to incorporate in the artistic practice those aspects of visual culture that weren't traditionally part of it but that had inevitably become elements of the everyday life, from product packaging to cinema celebrities. The group's collective exhibition, This Is Tomorrow, held at a Whitechapel Gallery in London in 1956, served as the key starting point for pop art, providing an unprecedented example of integration between art and modern life. Richard Hamilton, 1922 to 2011. Hamilton was known as father of British pop art. He was born in London. He was educated at the Royal Academy Schools from 1938 to 1940, then studied engineering draftsmanship at a government training center in 1940, then worked as jig and tool designer. His collage presents a living room space filled with objects and ideas that, according to Hamilton, were crowding into the post-war consciousness. Drawing the viewer's attention is the figure of the bodybuilder holding a giant lollipop with the word pop scrolled on it. Not surprisingly, then, this collage is often referred to as the first example of pop art. Famous works of Richard Hamilton. Just what is it that makes today's home so different, so appealing? 1956. Interior, 1964. Andy Warhol, 1928 to 1987. Andy Warhol was an American visual artist, film director, and producer who was a leading figure in a visual art movement known as pop art. His works explore the relationship between artistic expression, advertising, and celebrity culture that flourished by the 1960s and span a variety of media, including painting, silk screening, photography, film, and sculpture. Warhol's fascination with popular culture and fame led him to produce a great number of screen prints depicting portraits of celebrities, experimenting with variation in colors and multiplication. Famous works of Andy Warhol: Campbell's Soup Cans, 1937. Shot Marylins, 1962. Coca-Cola, 1962. How to make a pop art. Make a selfie artwork. 1. Take a selfie and print it out 6 times in black and white. 2. On each selfie, use just 2 coloring pencils to color in your hair, face, and eyes. 3. Once each selfie is colored in, cut it out and then stick them on a sheet of paper side by side. For further understanding about the topic, let's have activity number 1, My Masterpiece. Directions. On a separate sheet of paper, Create your own artwork integrating the characteristics of op art and pop art. Use a short band paper. Put the title of your work. Your output will be assessed based on the rubric. Rubric for activity number 1. I hope you learned a lot from our lesson for today. Thank you for listening.